Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this exciting webinar focusing on boxed expressions. Presenting for us today is Ian Teague. He's a product engineer at FlexRule. He also happened to be the person that created our free DMN certification course. So he's the one to ask all your technical questions. My name is Adrian Nogorski. I'm an advocate for decision intelligence in organizations. So this is the second in a series of webinars on a deep, in-depth technical demonstration of DMN. So we'll be building on the previous project in that webinar, or the previous one called DMN in Action. So if you'd like to watch the previous one, just head over to our events page, but we'll do a recap before the live demonstration. So just as always, just a bit of housekeeping before we start. We are recording the session, so if you drop off for any reason, rest assured I'll be sending out the recording once it becomes available post-event. There is a Q&A section, and we are monitoring the chat. So if we don't answer your question for any reason, don't worry. I'll personally send out an email response to each question. FlexRule is headquartered in Melbourne, Australia, and the reason for our existence is to enable organizations to be able to adapt and adjust to changing environments. With clients across the world in almost every industry, from manufacturing, government, banking, and insurance. So I want to just to take a few minutes now to just recap, where does DMN fit into the picture? Traditionally, organizations focused on solving problems in silos. A siloed approach to rules, data, machine learning, it doesn't help organizations as a whole to improve their decision-making scenarios. And the reason for that is there's no consensus on what a business decision is. And there isn't a common language to explicitly model decision making across the different teams and silos. So this leads to ambiguity about what business decisions are, how do we define them, how do we model them, improve and automate them. So each silo team develops their own understanding and technical approaches that often fail to resonate with the business stakeholders. So while everyone hopes to improve the business decisions, hope isn't a strategy. So without a deliberate effort to address this ambiguity, even successful siloed approaches deliver minimal impact. So that lack of common language, it just becomes another barrier and challenge in improving the organization's decision making as a whole. So we have to ensure that the business decisions are the first-class citizen in an organization by taking a decision-centric approach, which leads to explicitly modeling, managing, automating business decisions. So in explicitly modeling the decision, the best common language that fills the gap between the different teams and stakeholders is DMN, or Decision Model and Notation, as you can probably see on the slide. It solves this problem. It unifies the teams with a common language that is unambiguous, clear, simple, and understandable across all stakeholders. So let me just quickly go over the key components of DMN as a recap. And the first component is DRD, or the Decisions Requirements Diagram. The first step is to model the business decisions at a conceptual level using the decisions requirements diagram. So the DRD actually allows you to decompose a complex business decision into subcomponents. So these subcomponents can range from different things such as input data, business knowledge. So as you see on the slide on the screen now, the pink round one is the input data. The blue rectangle is our decision. Below it, the green ones would symbolize the business knowledge. And below that, the yellow one is the reference documentation for that specific business knowledge. So as you can see, with one single decision requirements diagram, you can bring every piece of that decision-making scenario together at a conceptual level. Now, once you model the business decision using DRD, then it'll provide that clarity, transparency, and accuracy in understanding how the decisions are made. It makes it unambiguous. It defines and communicates the business decisions to the broader group of stakeholders that this decision is relevant to. The next component is SDMN. A very interesting component here because it's the way you need to standardize the data exchange between decisions and systems. And that's what that data input shape in the decisions requirement diagram attempts to do. So to define that data structure around these standardized data exchange, there's another standard and it's also called SDMN, Shared Data Model and Notation. Fact concept in FlexRule allows you to model these standard data exchange fields, information, constraints, property, and complex business objects in a very visual way. So now that we've modeled that data exchange, one of the most important parts in any organization is to capture the domain knowledge, and that is using business rules. So that brings us to the next component, which is the decision table. So DMN has a standard way of modeling business rules, and that is using a decision table. The decision table as a whole umbrella belong to DMN and is a type of boxed expression, which Ian will cover in depth shortly. So the decision table has inputs and outputs, and as you see on the screen, all those green columns are our inputs, and the orange column is the outcome or the output. So in a decision a decision table, you can have as many inputs or outputs as you like. And also DMN and FlexRule actually allows you to have annotation and description for every single row. So if you pick any row, that will construct the business rule. So we know that in organizations, domain knowledge isn't always based on rules. The last component I'd like to cover is the boxed expressions. So boxed expressions allow you to specify simple and complex behaviors to implement a decision logic, which is not rule driven. For example, calculating the amount of a monthly installment or determining the loan affordability. So boxed expression, as the name suggests, uses expressions, and the expression language in DMN is called FEEL or friendly enough expression language. Think of FEEL like Excel formulas. It lets you handle more complex logic, just like formulas in Excel go beyond simple data entry. So Field provides a set of formulas to model that complex behaviors, and through box expressions, reusable components, you can apply this logic across the various decision scenarios using Field expression language. So today we will deep dive into box expressions. I will now hand over to you, Sir Ian. Are you ready?
Yes, thanks, Adrian. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining this webinar on boxed expressions. What we're going to do today is take the loan risk category project we created in the last webinar in this series and add a boxed expression to it. And this is to calculate the monthly payment for a loan. So last time we calculated the risk category of giving someone a loan. And now we're going to add a business decision to determine what the monthly payment would be for that loan. So part one of the project was to calculate the risk category that an applicant falls into for a loan organization. This was done using data on the applicant. And the next step that organization wants to take is what will required monthly installments be for that applicant? So say I apply for a loan using my applicant data, they'll calculate the risk category I fall into. Now using data on the loan that I want, such as loan type, amount, rate, and term, they want to figure out what I will be paying monthly to determine if this is something I can afford or not. Let's briefly go over what we did in the last webinar. We built this project which calculates the risk category of giving someone a loan using decision tables. The output of the project is a string value that can be low, medium, high, or very high. As a refresher, the green columns here of this decision table are conditions, and the orange columns are actions. So in this decision table, the first row there with the existing customer parameter set to false and the risk score parameter less than 100, the conditions of the first row could be met and the risk category output of this decision table is set to the string medium. At the top left of the decision table there, you can see it's set to single hit, which means once a condition of a row is met, the decision table does not process the following rows. The project we created last time took input data called applicant data, which we set up using this pink input node in this DRD. And in the input value composer window there, you can see the expected structure of the applicant data input. It has attributes such as age, marital status, and it also has the monthly attribute, which with its own attributes, income, repayment, and expenses. The structure of that input is set up in the fact concept of this project right here. In the last webinar, this was built by actually importing a JSON file that came with the project requirements, and it automatically set this structure up for us. Again, in that project, we used two decision tables represented by the green nodes in the DRD, both based on business rules to get the resulting risk category. Decision tables are a type of boxed expression, and anytime you represent a boxed expression in a DRD, you use these green business knowledge nodes. So with this first step, we found the risk category. For the second step, we'll use new input to determine the monthly payment for a loan. Again, the first part of the project was to calculate the risk category based on applicant data. The next step is to calculate monthly payment based on loan data. And the purpose for getting both of these is the loan organization will use them to determine if an applicant can actually afford a loan. Here we have a document that has requirements for determining the monthly installment for a loan organization. We're going to build the next part of the project using these requirements to calculate monthly installments given attributes of a loan. The first part of this document has a new input that's needed called requested product. And in this case, product would refer to a loan. Here's that requested product added to our fact concept with its members reflecting what's in that input. Product type, which is a string, and rate, term, and amount, which are all decimals. In our DRD, that needs to be added as an input node where we set its type as requested product. Once we do that, we go to run the DRD and it expects that requested product as input. The next page in the document has example input and expected output for what we built in the previous webinar and what we're building now. So it has applicant data to get the risk category and the requested product to get the monthly installment. So I'll add this as a run template in our project. So when we finish it and run it, we should get a monthly installment of $3,153. The next section of the requirements is the calculation we do for required monthly installment. This is what the requested product input is used for. In the monthly fee section, the product type attribute is used to calculate the monthly fee with a series of if-then statements. In the monthly repayment section, we have a formula that uses the rate, term, and amount from the requested product input. And the final output is the required monthly installment, which is a sum of those first two sections, monthly fee and monthly repayment. And now we're going to see how to take these requirements and actually create them as a DMN boxed expression. When you add a new box expression in FlexRule, you'll see the toolbox changes to contain different types of boxed expressions. And the first one I often add is the boxed context, which is a group or container for other boxed expressions that you use to get a final result. And you can also add entries to a box context, which can contain constant values, formulas, or even other box expressions. So for this logic, we can start with dragging and dropping a box context, and then we'll create that monthly fee section of the requirements. We can do this using a conditional box that represents the if then else structure. Here we represent if product is standard loan, then return 20. And nested in the else for that is another box conditional. If product type is special loan, then return 25, else return no. And we can set that conditional to a parameter we call monthly fee. Here we have an entry which holds the monthly repayment formula, and this is labeled as monthly repayment. So when we use that term again, it'll represent this formula. And then a return, so that the entire box context here returns the final required monthly installment variable. So here we're returning monthly repayment added to monthly fee, which is the parameter set to the conditional. And what's cool about box expressions is this logic can be reused anywhere in the project. It can be used multiple times in a DRD or even in separate DRDs within the same project. There's some more details that go into creating these, such as binding parameters from the DRD, and we'll go over those during the live demo. Back in our DRD, we can add a decision node to represent that required monthly installment decision, and a green business knowledge node that contains the box expression we just created. And next, I want to show you how to build this box expression live in Designer. So I'm going to pause to take a drink of water. And Adrian, if I can share my screen now. Okay, can you see my screen, Adrian?
Yes, I can.
Great. All right, so here we have our project. We have the DRD with the monthly installment decision, the requested product input node, and a business knowledge node that'll represent our box expression. I added a fourth decision here so that everything is connected, because without that, we won't be able to run the DRD. But we'll actually be adding in the logic for this decision in the next webinar. From the last webinar, we have these two decision tables and the fact concept, where I've created a fact with the new requested product input. And here on the right is our documentation with the requirements for monthly installment calculation. And you can see how the input for requested product matches with our fact concept there. It has the same four members: product type, which is a string, then rate, term, and amount, which are all decimals. So now back in the DRD, for the input node I added, I need to set its type in the properties. And its assembly will be set to that fact concept document. And within there, we want to set it to requested product. So now if I go to run the project, it'll actually expect that requested product as an input. If I scroll down in the requirements document, it gives us example input that contains applicant data right here. And it also contains the requested product data. And I have this saved as a run template. So when I run it from here, it'll fill all those values in for us. And once we finish the project, we should get this expected output of 3,000. If we scroll down further in the requirements, we get to the formulas for monthly installment calculation. We have a green business knowledge node that will represent a box expression. It'll contain all the calculations for monthly installment calculation. And I'm going to go ahead and label that node now as required monthly installment calculation. And to have this actually work as a box expression, I need to set as function here to true and give it a meaningful name. And then in the associated decision, set its expression as the name of the box expression. Now we'll create a new box expression. And call it monthly installment calculation. In that box expression, we'll drag and drop a context and open up the variables definition window to create parameters for this box expression. First, I'll create an output parameter. That'll be called monthly installment calculation. That'll be of the type decimal. Then we need the variables to match our requested product input. We'll do product type, which is a string type, and an input variable. Then we have amount, which is also an input, and a decimal, and same with rate. And term. Now we're going to set the result of the context to our output parameter. So we'll set that to monthly installment calculation. And now we'll add a box conditional to represent the monthly fee logic. So in its properties, I want to label it as monthly fee. Now, following the requirements for monthly fee, if product type is standard loan, then return 20. And for the else here, I can drag and drop another conditional and have it nested. If product type is special loan, then 25. And if product type is anything else, monthly fee should be set to null. Now we'll do the monthly repayment section. For that, we'll add an entry and label it as monthly repayment. And since our parameters match up, we can just copy and paste that formula in there. And for the required monthly installment, we'll add a return to the context and set it to the sum of monthly repayment and monthly fee. Since we're working with money, we just want to use 2 decimal places. And if you open up the help menu here, you can actually get a list of functions with their descriptions and examples. Here we have all the DMN functions. So what I'm going to use is this decimal function here. And set decimal places to 2. That finishes our box expression logic. Now back to the DRD. And we need to associate what we just built with our green node. So we can drag and drop that from the Project Explorer right to that node, and it'll be associated. And now we need to bind the parameters we used. So we can click on the monthly installment decision, open up the bindings field. And when you add a new binding, you can actually click on this drop down and see all input parameters being used. So you need to go through each one and assign it to the value they need to be from the DRD. These are all values from the requested product fact. And so when I open up this box here, if you press Control Space, it comes right up, and we can auto complete all these. So we'll do the same for amount. Rate. And term. And that should be everything that we need. We'll use the example template where a value of 3,000 is expected. I'll put it into debug mode. Right now we're at the monthly installment decision, and it's calling the monthly installment box expression. Now it's running through that. And in our parameters here, you can see required monthly installment matches up with our expected value. So we've completed step 2, where we've added a box expression to a DMN project to calculate the monthly payment for a loan. I hope you guys will join us for our next webinar, which will be on advanced concepts with boxed expressions. And we'll be using that last decision to calculate affordability. Thanks for joining us. Back to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Ian. That was really great to see how boxed expressions are used. So now that you've had a good introduction of DMN, why not make it official? We have a free certification course on DMN. So be the first one on your team to get this certification. So register at academy.flexrule.com. All right, and now for my favorite part, the Q&A. And if I look at chat, we have a couple of questions. The first one here for you, Ian. Does FlexRule support all types of DMN boxed expressions?
Yes. Being that FlexRule is Conformance Level 3, it supports any DMN models and can run them and import them. That includes any type of boxed expression. And if you want to see a list of all types of boxed expressions, you can actually go to our resource hub, and that's at resource.flexrule.com. Click on DMN there, and there's a section on box expressions, and it gives you all the different types and examples on how to use them.
Great. And there's one more question here. Can you carry out the same expressions in decision nodes as in boxed expressions?
Yes. Decision nodes, just like box expressions, can use field expressions, the DMN language. In the properties window for a decision node, you can enter in an expression in the expression field. However, this wouldn't give you the advantages of reusable logic that box expressions give you.
Okay. Thank you for that. And if there's any other questions, or if you'd like to talk to us about how FlexRule can help you, I invite you to reach out to us via email at info@flexrule.com, or as Ian mentioned, please visit our website for many helpful articles, resources, and much more. We're also very active on social media, so please follow us on LinkedIn or X, and as you can guess, our handle is @FlexRule. So thank you again for making the time to join us, and I hope this short presentation has been insightful. So we look forward to seeing you on the next installment in the series, where we'll take a more advanced look at DMN. So have a good day and bye for now.